My husband cut my son's hair without asking. I was furious, but I knew how to get even. My son, Ethan, has always had a special relationship with his hair. It wasn't just hair to him. It was a part of his identity, a shield of sorts, something that defined him in a world that often tried to box him into conformity. His long, thick black hair cascaded down past his chest, each strand meticulously maintained and cherished. It was his pride and joy, and to be honest, it was mine too. As his mother, I had watched him grow with it, watched it change as he did, and saw how much it meant to him. Ethan's stepdad and my husband had a different view. He never quite understood why Ethan was so attached to his hair. To him, it seemed like a girlish affectation, something unnecessary for a young man. He wasn't overtly cruel about it, but his disapproval was clear, especially in our private conversations. He'd look more presentable with a clean cut, he'd say, his voice laced with an insistence that bordered on dismissive. I always brushed it off, telling him that it wasn't his place to decide what Ethan did with his hair. But deep down, I worried about the tension it created. The storm hit one afternoon when I was out running errands. I came home to find Ethan standing in front of the bathroom mirror, tears streaming down his face, scissors in hand. My heart sank as I took in the sight of him, his hair unevenly hacked in places, a look of devastation etched into his features. "What happened?" I asked, panic lacing my voice, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Ethan turned to me, his eyes red and swollen. "He did it, Mom! He just cut it!" He choked out, his hands trembling as he gestured to his butchered hair. My husband had decided to take matters into his own hands after a heated argument with Ethan about his school attendance. Ethan had been skipping classes, something we both agreed was unacceptable, but this was not the way to address it. I found my husband in the living room, a self-satisfied look on his face, as if he had just solved the world's problems with one swift action. The sight of him sitting there, oblivious to the emotional wreckage he had caused, ignited a fire within me. "How could you?" I demanded, my voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How could you think this was an appropriate punishment?" His expression hardened, defensive walls going up. He needed a consequence, something that would make an impact, he replied, as if cutting Ethan's hair was a logical form of discipline. We argued, voices rising in a crescendo of frustration and resentment. I'd challenged his decision, saying that there were other ways to deal with Ethan's behavior, ways that didn't involve stripping him of something so personal and meaningful. But he remained unmoved, convinced that he had done the right thing. That night, I sat with Ethan, trying to console him as he mourned the loss of his hair. It was more than just hair to him. It was confidence, a badge of his individuality. As I held him, I realized that I needed to do something to show him that I was on his side, that his identity mattered more than any misguided attempt at discipline. Then, I remembered the jacket. Ethan had been eyeing this particular designer leather jacket for months. It was one of those items that a teenager dreams about but knows is a long shot, given its price tag. It seemed almost symbolic now, a way to uplift him and perhaps restore a sense of pride that had been so thoughtlessly taken away. The next day, I took my husband's credit card and bought the jacket. It felt a bit like poetic justice, using his money to mend what he had broken. When the package arrived, the look on Ethan's face was worth every penny. It didn't replace what he had lost, but it was a gesture that said, "I see you. I value you." My husband, of course, discovered the purchase soon after. His anger was palpable, his voice echoing through the walls as he confronted me. "What were you thinking?" he demanded, incredulous and furious. I met his gaze, calm but resolute. "I was thinking that you owe him an apology. His hair will take years to grow back, but you can make that money back in no time." There was a tense silence between us, a standoff that spoke volumes about the deep-seated issues we had ignored for too long. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about a haircut or a jacket. It was about respect, about understanding and valuing each other's boundaries. Ethan wore that jacket with pride, a symbol of resilience and defiance. And slowly, as his hair began to grow back, I saw a new confidence in him, one that was forged from overcoming adversity rather than just the length of his hair. In the days that followed, my husband and I had many long, difficult conversations. We had to confront the ways we had communicated, or failed to, and the impact it had on our family. It wasn't easy, and it took time, but we started to rebuild, this time with more understanding and respect for each other's perspectives. As I reflect on it now, I realize that sometimes the smallest acts of rebellion can be the most powerful. They can spark change and force us to see beyond our own narrow viewpoints. And while I wouldn't wish that pain on my son again, I am grateful for the lessons it taught us all about love, respect, and the importance of letting each other be who we truly are. In the days that followed, the tension in our home was palpable, hanging in the air like a storm cloud that refused to break. Every glance between my husband and me was loaded with unspoken words, a reminder of the unresolved conflict that simmered just below the surface. Ethan, though, seemed to draw strength from his new jacket, wearing it as a shield against the world and the recent upheaval in his life. At school, the whispers and stares were inevitable. The change in his appearance was drastic, and teenagers can be unkind, their curiosity often manifesting as cruel jokes or thinly veiled taunts. But what struck me most was Ethan's resilience. He held his head high, refusing to let the chatter diminish his spirit. I admired that about him. The quiet strength he had always possessed, now forced into the open by circumstance. One evening, as I watched him from the kitchen window, he stood in the backyard, the setting sun casting a warm glow on the remnants of his once long hair. He seemed lost in thought, his fingers absent-mindedly running through the short strands as if trying to reconcile with the new reality. I felt a pang of guilt for not being there to prevent the incident, but also a swell of pride at how he was handling it. I decided it was time for another conversation with my husband. We needed to address the root of the issue, not just for Ethan's sake, but for ours as well. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, I approached my husband with a calm determination. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady but urgent. He looked up from the book he was pretending to read, his expression wary. "About what?" "About everything," I replied. "About Ethan, about us. We need to figure out how to move forward without tearing each other apart." He sighed, setting the book aside. "I know," he admitted, the fight gone from his voice. "I know I handled it wrong. I just didn't know how to get through to him." I sat down beside him, feeling the weight of his admission. Cutting his hair wasn't the answer. It was like taking a part of him without his consent. We need to respect his choices, even if we don't understand them. He nodded slowly, and I could see the realization dawning on him. I guess I just thought, maybe it was a way to get him to take things seriously. There are other ways, I insisted gently. We need to support him, guide him, not force him into a mold he doesn't fit. We talked deep into the night, unraveling the tangled mess of expectations and misunderstandings that had brought us to this point. It was exhausting, yet cathartic, a necessary step toward healing. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's hair began to grow back, each inch marking a small victory in his journey back to himself. My husband made more of an effort to connect with him, finding common ground in unexpected places. They started working on a project card together, something that required patience and collaboration, and in turn began repairing their relationship. I also made sure to reinforce the importance of communication within our family. We began having regular check-ins, informal chats around the dinner table where we could express our thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start, a way to ensure that none of us felt isolated or unheard. Reflecting on it all now, I realize how pivotal that moment was for our family. The incident with Ethan's hair had been a catalyst, exposing the fractures in our relationships and forcing us to confront them. It taught us the value of empathy and the need to respect each other's autonomy, even when it conflicted with our own beliefs. And as for Ethan, he emerged from the experience stronger, more self-assured. The jacket, once just a coveted item, became a symbol of his resilience, a reminder of the battles he'd fought and the person he'd become. In many ways, it was a gift that went far beyond its material value, representing the unwavering support of a mother who would always stand by his side. In the end, we all learned that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected places, and that the bonds of family, though tested, can be incredibly resilient when nurtured with love and understanding. One afternoon, a few months after the incident, I found myself sitting in the living room watching as a late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor. The house was quiet, a rare moment of stillness that seemed almost sacred. I could hear the faint sounds of laughter and clanking tools coming from the garage where my husband and Ethan were working side by side on the car they had taken to restoring. It was a sight that warmed my heart, a testament to the progress we had made as a family. The project had become more than just a mechanical endeavor. It was a bridge, a way for them to communicate without words, to share a space where understanding grew naturally. I marveled at the way they had found this rhythm, their rapport built not on forced conversation, but on shared experience and mutual respect. As I sat there, I thought back to the initial shock and hurt of that day when I had walked in to find Ethan cutting his own hair, tears streaming down his face. It It had felt like the end of something, a rupture that could never be repaired. But now I could see that it was actually the beginning of a new chapter, one where we could all be more open and honest with each other. I was pulled from my reverie by the sound of the front door opening. It was my daughter, Lily, returning from a friend's house. She bounded into the room, her energy a stark contrast to the quiet contemplation I had been indulging in. "Hey, Mom," she said, flopping onto the couch beside me. "What are you thinking about?" I smiled at her, grateful for her presence. "Just how far we've come," I replied softly. "It hasn't been easy, but I think we're in a better place now." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Ethan seems happier," she observed. "And Dad, well, he's trying. I think he gets it now." "Yeah," I agreed, feeling a swell of hope. "We've all learned a lot." We sat together in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. It struck me how resilient my children were, how they had navigated the challenging dynamics of our blended family with grace and strength. It was a reminder of the responsibility I had to nurture that resilience, to ensure they always felt supported and valued. Later that evening, as we gathered around the dinner table, the atmosphere was light and easy. The conversation flowed naturally, with laughter interspersed between bites of food. It was a stark contrast to the tense silence that had dominated our meals in the immediate aftermath of the hair-cutting incident. "Ethan," I ventured, as a lull in the conversation presented itself, "how are things going at school? I know it was a bit rough at first." He looked up, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's getting better," he said. "I think people are starting to forget about the whole hair thing. Plus, the jacket definitely helps." I chuckled, relieved to hear the humor in his voice. "I'm glad. You know, I'm really proud of how you've handled everything." His smile widened, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." My husband, who had been listening quietly, reached over to squeeze Ethan's shoulder. "You've really grown up, son. I'm proud of you, too." Ethan nodded, acknowledging the gesture with a look that spoke volumes. It was a small moment, but one that felt significant, a sign that healing was truly taking place. As the evening wore on and the stars began to twinkle outside, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons learned, for the bonds strengthened, and for the unwavering love that had guided us through. It wasn't a perfect journey, but it was ours, and that made it all the more meaningful. In the end, the incident with Ethan's hair had been a turning point, not just for him, but for all of us. It had forced us to confront our own biases and expectations, to open our hearts to understanding and acceptance. And in doing so, it had brought us closer together, reinforcing the foundation of our family with compassion and respect. As I tucked Ethan in that night, I couldn't help but run my fingers through his hair, now starting to regain its former glory. He leaned into the touch, a contented sigh escaping his lips. "Good night, Mom," he murmured, his eyes already drifting shut. "Good night, my love," I whispered, brushing a kiss across his forehead. "Sleep well." And as I left his room, I carried with me the knowledge that we had come through the storm, stronger and more united than before. It was a journey I wouldn't trade for anything, a testament to the enduring power of love and family. Subscribe for more stories.